Welcome to Africa Geotrends, your window into Africa's power, progress, and geopolitics. Asterisk before we dive in, hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss the stories shaping Africa's future. African history. What began as a pilot project in West Africa, created by Afreximbank and supported by the African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, is now gaining support from 9 additional countries preparing to adopt the system. If implemented at scale, PAPSS would allow millions of Africans to trade, move money, and run businesses without needing the US dollar as the intermediary. This is not anti-American. This is not anti-European. This is a long overdue economic correction. For the first time in modern history, African governments, central banks, and regional blocs are coordinating to build a sovereign financial network capable of serving one of the fastest-growing markets on Earth. Businesses could pay in their own currencies. Traders could move goods across borders instantly. African banks could settle transactions in seconds. And Africans could keep billions of dollars in fees currently leaking out of the continent. The shift is massive. The timing is shocking. And the implications for global finance are enormous. Across Abuja, Nairobi, Accra, Kigali, Cairo, and Johannesburg, policymakers are quietly preparing for a landscape where African currencies circulate more freely, foreign exchange pressure eases, and intracontinental trade accelerates at a pace never seen before. While the world debates de-dollarization among giants like China, Russia, and the BRICS bloc, Africa has taken its own path, faster, quieter, and potentially more transformative. The real story is not about abandoning the dollar. It is about building a system where Africa is no longer forced to borrow its financial identity from the West. 9 nations showing readiness for PAPSS integration represent only the beginning. The African Union has already declared PAPSS the official payment platform for AfCFTA's $3.4 trillion market. The system is live. Transactions have begun. And every month, new governments signal interest in joining. This is the breakthrough the global financial system never expected, and the move that could shift economic power toward a continent rising with unprecedented speed. This is how Africa began cutting its dependence on the dollar, and why the world should pay attention. Africa's payment system has long been fragmented, shaped by colonial-era structures that forced countries to depend on foreign currencies for trade. Even after independence, African businesses found themselves using the US dollar or euro to settle simple cross-border transactions. A trader exporting cocoa from Ivory Coast to Senegal, a distance shorter than many domestic routes, had to route payments through correspondent banks in Europe. The financial cost was enormous. Africa lost an estimated $5 billion annually in payment-related fees. Transactions took an average of 3 to 5 days to settle. More than 80% of intra-African trade still relied on foreign currency. The impact was clear. African economies were growing, but their financial systems were lagging decades behind. In 2022, Afreximbank and the AfCFTA Secretariat introduced PAPSS as a solution, designed to connect central banks, commercial banks, payment providers, and businesses on one real-time platform capable of settling cross-border payments instantly using local currencies. PAPSS solved problems that had persisted for generations. The pilot stage in the West African Monetary Zone, Nigeria, Ghana, Guinea, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and the Gambia, proved what was possible. Transactions that once took days were reduced to seconds. Transfer fees dropped dramatically. Businesses began conducting cross-border trade without touching foreign currency at all. By 2024 to 2025, the African Union adopted PAPSS as the official payment and settlement platform of AfCFTA's integrated market. This decision became one of the most significant economic steps in Africa's modern history. Yet Western media barely covered it. Governments across East, Central, and Southern Africa soon signaled interest in joining. Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, Zambia, Egypt, and South Africa entered technical integration discussions. Analysts describe this moment as Africa's 9-nation acceleration, a coalition preparing to drive continental adoption. There were 3 major forces behind the shift. First was the rising cost of dollar dependence. Global monetary tightening made access to dollars harder and more expensive. African currencies came under pressure. Businesses struggled to import goods. By enabling trade in local currencies, PAPSS offered a structural solution. Second was the need for a unified African market. AfCFTA, the world's largest free trade zone by membership, required a modern payment backbone. PAPSS became that backbone, allowing a Ghanaian exporter to receive cedis while a Kenyan buyer pays in shillings. Third was geopolitical competition. As China, the United States, the Gulf, and the EU intensified their race for influence in Africa, African leaders saw the importance of owning their financial infrastructure. PAPSS emerged as a sovereignty tool. Across Africa's major economic centers, businesses began adapting. In Lagos, e-commerce platforms tested PAPSS for cross-border transactions. In Nairobi, fintech startups built APIs to integrate with the system. In Accra, traders in electronics markets conducted pilot transactions that bypassed foreign currency entirely. PAPSS's architecture is simple but revolutionary. Central banks act as settlement agents. All currencies are accepted. Exchange rates are determined locally. No correspondent banks are required, and settlements occur in real time. Afreximbank provides settlement guarantees, ensuring trust across borders. The potential impact is enormous. PAPSS could save Africa billions annually, reduce trade barriers for small businesses, accelerate the digital economy, and ease pressure on African currency reserves. But beyond economics, the psychological shift is powerful. For decades, Africans were told the global financial system belonged to others. PAPSS represents a transition in which African engineers, economists, policymakers, and institutions design their own systems, built for African needs and African possibilities. Challenges remain. Successful implementation requires tight regulatory coordination, cybersecurity safeguards, trust between central banks, and transparency among commercial banks. Yet momentum continues to build. In early 2025, a joint African Union, Afreximbank, AfCFTA statement confirmed ongoing expansion across multiple regions. Finance ministers described PAPSS as infrastructure not only for payments, but for economic sovereignty. The 9-country expansion is just the beginning. Full continental adoption would create one of the world's largest unified payment ecosystems, serving 1.4 billion people in a market projected to reach $16 trillion in GDP by 2050. The story is not one of rebellion, but of modernization, ambition, and self-determination. Africa is redefining how it trades, how it connects, and how it controls its financial future. PAPSS is not the conclusion of this transformation. It is the opening chapter. You've been watching Africa Geo Trends, where Africa's moves shape the world. That if you haven't already, subscribe now and stay ahead of the next big story.